We get out, everybody's leaking whatever they were drinking. We were just, just leaking fuming.
Hey everybody, what's up? Trey Wingo here. Welcome into another episode of Half Forgotten History. This week's guest is a former running back in the NFL who could make a really good claim to belong in the Hall of Fame. He racked up over 11,000 rushing yards, but still hasn't heard the call or gotten the gold jacket. That's one of the many things we'll discuss with former Jacksonville Jags running back Fred Taylor, who starred at Florida and then stayed in-state and played for the Jags when the Jags were good, like they might be again this season. Please now enjoy this Half Forgotten History episode with Jacksonville Jaguars running back Fred Taylor. Okay, so when I approached you about doing the show, I talked to Ryan, because Ryan's my boy, and I said, give me some stuff about Fred that I don't know. And the one thing he said to me was, he's the coolest cat I've ever met. So why would he tell me that?
That's crazy, man. I know there were times where I'm sure he hated my guts, but that was only football specifically related to that. I don't know. I'm just chill, man. I don't get too high. I don't get too low. And I think that's costing me a bit of, or it had costed me a bit of notoriety and attention when I played. I was never a guy to cause any ruckus or create a media storm or shit show or whatever it is. I'm just laid back. I'm just me. And I treat people like people. I just feel that I was blessed to be able to play ball at a high level. And really, that's it. I just play football. I'm just a human. I'm just a person.
All right, so before we get into the football stuff, because it is fascinating, there's a lot of stuff to get into. How did you connect with Ryan and the crazy man, Channing, for the pivot that you guys do now? Like, how did this all come together?
Well, we used to do we did a previous podcast throughout the pandemic with Brandon Marshall, Chad Ochocinco, myself, Channing, and we didn't have the business button up over there, and a few things went south, so we decided to pivot, and we did our own thing. And Ryan, at one moment, I believe it was the Dwayne Wade episode over there, he was a fill-in host for, I believe it was Chad Ocho, and knowing how great Ryan is on ESPN, how how real he is and how authentic he is, just in life in general. He was the first name that popped up. We didn't have a plan B or a second option.
Yeah.
We said we're going to do it with Ryan, or we just going to do it, with ourselves and figure it out as we go. But Ryan was the perfect option, and as you can see, as everyone else sees, he makes the show. He's just amazing, man, and it's a blessing for Channing and myself to have been able to land him, because it really makes the show, A1.
Well, listen, before we get into the show, that's all me, right? Like, Ryan will tell you, I made his television career. So, like, this is my gift to you and to Channing. So you're welcome.
Hey, man, I appreciate you 1,000%. I do appreciate you.
At some point, you got to get him to tell the story, and he'll tell you the stories.
Right.
But so the pivot is interesting, right? Because you guys have no boundaries. You guys go anywhere. What was the idea behind? I mean, like, I do a football show. Like, I like football and golf. This is what I do. It's what I want. You guys bring in Caitlyn Jenner, actors. I mean, you cast a wide net on the pivot.
Correct. I mean, that's what it is. We just want to paint pictures and tell stories, or allow the guests an opportunity to tell their story. It's not a black show. It's not a white show. It's a show. It's information. It's content. It's education. It's transparency. And for the most part, we do it all without a booking agent. Uh, and I think that's why we're able to sort of bounce around and have a huge variety of guests. We use our network. We use your network. We use whomever's network to get people on that, one, are willing to come on, that their schedule marries up with our schedule, because we're all over the place. I mean, we say, all right, we're not working today. What's your schedule, Ryan? What's your schedule, Channing? We have to find out what the camera crew is doing, what our producer, Alicia Zubakowski, what she's doing. And then we figure it out, set our dates, and then we go for it. And then we get there knowing that we have an opportunity allow the guests to tell a story that they can't necessarily or they don't necessarily tell on a network. It just feels like a locker room. It's just great conversations.
Yeah. The Taylor Lewan story, that was interesting.
Taylor.
Yeah.
So Taylor is great. Will Compton, his co-host, just busting with the boys, right? I think that was about a 3 hour sit down. And those guys are
Damn.
amazing. Ryan, your boy Ryan, he was in a different element. I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't know how many happy dads he had that day, but he was a happy
Yeah.
dad. He was just smiling and grinning and having to leave the bus to go take a piss. It was crazy. It was crazy.
All right. Well, listen, absolutely check out The Pivot. It's hilariously entertaining, and you guys will enjoy it. And Channing Crowder, like he's certifiable nuts, right? He's crazy.
He is certified nuts, 1,000% himself. Doesn't back
Yeah.
down for anyone, much like he did when he played. Just as black and white as you can. He's the Kanye of podcasts. How about that?
You know what? That makes all the sense in the world. Like
Yeah,
he is the Ye of podcasts. Absolutely. Unbelievable. That
right.
I
With
was
a
not
little Dave
expecting that
Chappelle, just
today,
a
but I'm glad I
sprinkle.
got that. Yeah.
Maybe a sprinkle of Dave Chappelle, but he's definitely
Yeah.
Kanye. He doesn't care.
Yeah, he has zero of you know what's left to give, and it shows
Right.
in every episode. So let's get into what you did before you were a podcast king, and that is obviously a hell of a football player. When did you know? Because you're looking at your resume and looking at your high school, and you were one of the greatest high school players in the history of the state of Florida, which produces a few football players.
Yeah.
How early did you know? Hey, I'm going to be good at this.
Trey, if I don't, I don't know, man, because I was just running around having fun competing. I didn't
Yeah,
look at the NFL. They actually, I had a dream to make the NFL or I did this or that. I never had that dream. I don't know what these guys are
really.
talking about. I just never had that vision. I never had a dream to be in the NFL. I was just going out there having fun with guys in the backyard. And, you know, I think, well, God does everything. So he just pushed me in that direction. And I just got better than everybody. All of my childhood friends, my game just elevated out of nowhere because I was the worst at one point, but I didn't want to be the worst. I couldn't catch. I was the slowest in the neighborhood. I didn't want to be that. So I went off on my own. I started training them by myself, doing
How
things.
old? How old were you?
Uh,
How old were you when this was going on? How old were you?
not 9 years old.
Wow.
It was around 1985. I remember watching, and it found me. The Chicago Bears, Walter Payton, that Super
Oh
Bowl run,
yeah.
the '85 Bears. And it
Mm-hmm.
found me, and I just fell in love with, how Sweetness would run. And I go out there and I move. I walk down the sidewalk in Belglade. So there will be cracks in the sidewalk and like gum droppings that left a black mark on the sidewalk. And I would run and I would kind of juke those marks and those cracks. And then that sort of evolved to uh, making people miss and dodging things. And then going home, we lived on the second story, and I would run the stairs every single day going home, every day leaving, just repeatedly every single day. And that was my version of a quick foot ladder and running up the hill, which is what Sweetness did all the time. And then that just sort of physically developed me. I got bigger, stronger, faster than everybody in my neighborhood. One of the fastest guys in my hometown back in Belglade, and I just turned into a pretty good player. And the rest is history. But I never knew how good I was. Even sometimes in the NFL, I never knew how good I was. Around year 4 or 5, after the injuries let up, I really got that confidence, and I told myself, man, they fear you. Like the
Yeah.
D coordinators, they fear you. Those players fear you. Now you got to play that way. And that's when I realized that I was one of the best in the world at what I would do, at what I could do. And I never backed down since then. It took a while to figure it out.
Yeah, well, it always does. I mean, and what couple of things that you just said I find really interesting. We just taped with Megatron, Calvin Johnson, not too long ago, and he told me his high school nickname as a wide receiver was Butterfingers. Like, yeah, he couldn't catch. So when I hear you say you were the slowest guy in the neighborhood, and I hear Calvin Johnson say, "Yeah, my nickname was Butterfingers in high school," it just shows that it's really, you can have all the talent in the world, but it's about putting in the work.
You got to put in the work 1,000%. You got to put that work in. I mean, I have guys that have made it to the NFL, guys that I grew up with that can vouch for me, and they can validate that statement about me not being able to catch, about me being the slowest guy. I got a quick story, Trey. My son Kelvin Taylor went to University of Florida.
Yep.
Same school I went to, wore same number jersey. Um, the field that I played in the Pop Warner Championship, we lost 31-13. I dropped 4 potential touchdowns that day. I was a tight end at the time and a defensive tackle. So I was modern day Aaron Donald back then, but that's another story. Um, when I would go and watch my son play, they have the exact same scoreboard that they had when I was a child playing Pop Warner there. And the only thing when I would see him play, I would always glance at that scoreboard and I would see 31-13, that ass whooping we got because I didn't catch the ball. And I could never live that down any day of my life. But yeah, man, I wasn't very good. I was a crybaby. I was a soft child, and I just got stronger, faster. I put in the work, and I just got better. I earned a scholarship. Told my grandmother I'd buy her home. Didn't know how, but I made a promise that I would. Got a few dollars, and that's what I did. Yeah.
I love stories like that because everybody has that thing that motivates them, right? We all know Tom Brady, the 190th pick, all that kind of stuff. But everybody has something. Like your teammate for a couple of years, Maurice Jones-Drew, chose number 32 because 32 teams passed him over in the first round. That was his motivation, and your motivation was that scoreboard where you dropped 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was definitely my motivation, along with wanting to be the best.
Yeah.
Didn't know that I was, but really just competing. Knowing that, if I run a track meet, I don't want this guy to beat me. If we run the 40, I want to have the fastest time on the field. If we run gassers after practice, I want to come in first every time. And just that mindset, that competitive drive, it pushes guys to greatness when they don't even think they're going to be the best in the world at whatever they're doing. But it always comes back to the work. And you can't run from it. Coach Belichick would always say, there's no magic pill, no magic potion. You got to put the work in each and every day. And that's what I did as a child, and God rewarded me by allowing me to go 9th pick overall to the Jags.
Yeah, and when you were a Jag, it was a thing. Like, people look at Jacksonville now, and I was talking about this with Tony Baselli, and they're like, oh, the Jags, what a bunch of losers. You guys were good. Like, the Jaguars were really good for a lot of years, and it's a shame to see what that franchise has sort of become.
Yeah, it's a shame. They're working at it. Don't know how long it's going to take. Much like I was saying on the radio show earlier, I'm a Jaguar lifer.
Yeah.
I'm always optimistic the start at each and every season. I'm rooting for Coach Peterson. I'm really rooting for Trevor Lawrence. Just an amazing kid.
Yep.
I want to see him do well and break every record that he can, starting with the franchise and from there, whatever he could do. But winning is key. Coach Coughlin he's an amazing person and a great coach. And we took it for granted in Jacksonville. I remember the city, the fans, the local fans, local media, they started this Fire Tom Coughlin thing, saying he's too hard on the players. They can't survive the fourth quarter because they practice too hard. We need a prayer-friendly coach. And then you insert Coach Del Rio, who had some pretty decent seasons there,
Yeah.
playoff runs here and there. So Jack wasn't a bad coach. In my eyes, he just wasn't Coach Coughlin from a disciplinarian, elevating you from a child to a man standpoint. But we were good. We had some really good players. Jimmy Keenan, Mark, Tony. On the defensive side, Kevin Hardy, Tony Brackens. Just a ton of great players, man. But we missed it. We missed our opportunity in 99, losing to the Titans. I hate the Titans in 99. But, we'll figure it out and we'll get better, as we keep going.
Well, let's listen. Before we take our first break, let's talk about that 99 season. You guys were undefeated except for Tennessee. Like that it's one of the craziest seasons in the history of the NFL. You guys won the division, despite losing both games to the Tennessee Titans, you destroy Dan Marino in his final playoff game, 62-7, I think was the final score. You got AFC championship game at home, and in comes Tennessee, and they beat you for a third time. How does that happen? How do you beat every other team in the league and you can't get by that one team?
Man, I absolutely hate talking about this. And it's so long ago. And, every AFC championship that I watch, I get pissed off knowing that it should have been us versus the Rams in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. I think we matched up better, as much speed, just across the board. It's just that one team had our number. So I go back I try not to have regrets or what ifs, but that's the one what if though. And I don't have a lot, but that's the one what if. They just had our number. Some teams, when you look at game planning and scheming, that sort of stuff, Jeff Fisher could rattle Coach Coughlin. And he would look over to our sidelines and do a little, peek over and do that smirk, and he would get under Coach Coughlin's skin. And that Coach Coughlin wanted to win those games because he knew we were more talented. He knew he was a better coach. Just couldn't figure it out. For some reason, we couldn't comprehend that matchup. And Tennessee, deservingly so, they won it. That's what it comes down to. They won their matchup. They beat us 3 times in a row. Buffalo, I'm kind of pissed at Buffalo too, in the refs, in the Music City Miracle.
Yeah.
Because I think we would have had an easier route to Atlanta. But the Titans, they just had our number then. And even now, what they're doing with the Jags, it reminds me a lot of, how it was throughout my career, where the Titans have been a better franchise versus the Jaguars.
All right. Everyone says, oh, you never get over it. You never get past it. You always remember the losses. But in listening to you, and again, as Ryan describing you as the coolest guy this still haunts you, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And what also haunts me, Trey, is Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When the Super Bowl is here, I don't get as excited as everybody else to watch it. Because I'm the type of player where I look around, I look at other guys that have been great in the NFL, and I just never got that opportunity. Well, I had an opportunity, but to play in an actual game, that opportunity. So I don't get excited when the Super Bowl is here. It's a bit depressing. So I don't necessarily participate in all of the different Super Bowl, the festivities and all of that stuff. I can watch the game and just really dissect the game.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, the post-game ceremony, I turn all of that crap off. Yeah. I've been doing it for 20 plus years now. I don't know, man. It's just one of those things. I felt that as hard as I worked in my childhood coming up in my pro career, even despite the injuries, I kept working, played 13 years, and I missed it. Even my 2 years in New England.
Yeah.
The year before I got there, they win the Super Bowl. The year after I leave there, they go to the Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, the first 5 years after I left there, I think they went to 3.
Yep.
It makes you realize timing is everything. But it pissed me off a lot. I was happy for those guys.
Yeah.
But just for myself personally, just not a great feeling when that time rolls around.
All right, so we'll move on from that. Why don't we take our first break? When we come back, we'll talk about the rest of Fred Taylor's career and some of the things he had to overcome while he was putting up record-setting numbers in Jacksonville. Stay with us on Half Forgotten History. We're coming right back. Time for our Mercedes-Benz trivia question. Fred Taylor is the all-time leading rusher in Jacksonville Jaguars history with 11,695 yards. But we want to know how many other teams' leading rushers have a higher rushing total than Taylor's with the Jags. We'll give you the answer after the break. You open up a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter and you're opening more than doors. You're unlocking potential to do your own thing, be your own boss, and live out your own dreams. With 16 body types, your choice of a gas or diesel engine, and thousands of ways to customize, a Sprinter van is capable and versatile enough to help you drive your ambitions as far as you want to take them. So go ahead, unlock your potential inside a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. All right, back with Fred Taylor here in Half Forgotten History. So, before our first break there, we got into a bunch of stuff, and you mentioned the injuries. And that was a thing for you for the first few years. And they even gave you the nickname Fragile Fred, which I think people now understand maybe a little bit better, the physical beating that players go through. I think it's more sort of understood. But back then, man, fans could be pretty relentless if they thought you were injury prone or soft. How hard was that to deal
Right.
with?
You know, I think it was more frustrating because I felt that I let the team and my teammates down. I didn't care what the fans thought in terms of me being soft or injury prone. You know, I only cared about the fans when we didn't win, when I was out there and we didn't win, because they were paying their hard earned money to come be entertained and cheer on their team. And when we couldn't get that W, I was upset for them and I felt bad for them. When it came to my injuries, I was, I'm a player, man. I want to be out there. I want to be out there, with an opportunity to go 50, 60, 70 versus a Ray Lewis or a Derrick Brooks or a John Lynch or whomever. I wanted to be there. So those were the times that the injuries were more frustrating. There was a stretch when I figured it out. I think it was about 4 years. I missed like one game over 4 years,
Yep.
and I was like, okay, I got this thing down pat, and just trying to grow up, mature, and do the necessary things to stay there or be there for the guys. And I don't know, just early in my career, I just I partied a little bit more than I should have. I thought I could just wake up and go run 4-3. I think a bit of how the game was then. I always laugh and say, if I can play under this current CBA,
Yeah.
I'll play 15, 18 years.
Yeah.
Like these guys, like along with the science that's behind it, the off-season regimens, the training, the nutrition aspect of it all. These guys, the training camp, the lack of contact, it's just so much stuff that should allow these guys to have longer, illustrious careers. But when we came around, 2 days in Florida,
Yeah.
full practices both days. Coach Coughlin did not screw around, and a bit wear and tear would catch up on you because I didn't know what rest was then.
Yeah.
But that's that, and neither here nor there. I still churned out 13 amazing years at the end of the day. Missed some games, but that's a part of history. I'm happy that I was able to finish in the top. When I retired, I was number 15th all time
Yeah.
in career rushing yards in the history of the game, over 1,000 backs or whatever. So I felt good about that in spite of missing those
Well,
games.
it's interesting too because there's a couple of points that you brought up. People look at the game now and they see all these numbers and all the stuff that's happening. And I don't think sometimes they fully understand how much different, even from 10 years ago, like just in the last decade, how much the game has changed in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, and the where. Like everybody killed the NFL Players Association when that CBA was signed in 2011, and they just re-upped it a couple of years ago. But that CBA allowed players' careers to be longer because of the things you said. We're not having 2-a-days anymore. We're not having all these padded practices where you're hitting people. And sometimes people will say, well, it leads to sloppier play, but it leads to playing longer. And at the end of the day, if you're the NFLPA, you're trying to make everybody's career be as long as possible. Like that's the stated goal. And it is very different now
Right.
than it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's way different. And again, just looking at a few things. The CBA starts in 2011. Um, the non-padded practices, the time on the field spent, and then you look at the rules changes, not hitting the defenseless receivers. Then you can't hit the quarterback. You got to hit them in a certain window. The Tom Brady rule, no rolling up on the quarterbacks, no hitting them high in the head. All of those things, not jamming the receivers at the line of scrimmage, free releases. This thing, I believe, was genius. It was part of maybe a future business model plan that the NFL had that would allow for greater scoring, which would allow for a greater fan experience
Correct.
overall.
Yeah.
Even from the television, the sponsorships and the TV deals. We want to watch exciting things.
Yeah.
We want you to be glued to your television because The way we played back in the day, methodically, we would run the ball 30, 40 times. You can actually go to your fridge, get a beer, come back, and they still be running the ball
Yeah.
or trying to. In today's game, they striking quick,
Yep.
40 points, 50 points. Those weren't a thing back in the day. I mean, unless you beat the Dolphins 62-7, but that's another story. Uh, but yeah, I think the rule changes have been great for the game. Even though they say, well, the game is like WWE now. It's not real football. We want to see knockouts. I get it, but it'll evolve.
Yeah.
It's evolved into what it is. Again, it allows for the guys to have not necessarily less injuries because they have had a lot of injuries out there, but I think that's usually earlier in the season, not towards the end of the year. But I think it makes for a better ticket sale with the way the game is now with the CBA and the rule changes.
I want to talk about one game in particular, and I'm pretty sure you have an idea of what it is. December 10th, 2006. You guys host the Indianapolis Colts, who, by the way, went on to win the Super Bowl that year in one of the weirdest things ever. But the only thing that stopped the Jaguars in that 44-17 win was the back of the end zone. Like, you guys ran for 375 yards in that game, and I think the first carry for you was a 76-yarder that probably should have been a touchdown.
I agree with you. Certainly should have been a touchdown. I just got to switch the ball to my right arm, stiffen with the left, and I score 96-yarder. Yeah, it should have been about a 96-yarder. But I said to myself on the first play, it was a zone left. I cut back right. I said I would do that based on how the safety leverage would be. Got the perfect look, made the cut, made a guy miss, and should have bumped my head on the goalpost like you just mentioned. And I think that the coach should have sent our entire offensive line along with the running backs, maybe even our coaching staff, a ring or two from that Super Bowl because they went and patched up their run defense because everybody tried to run the ball versus them in the playoffs. But they played well and they did enough to win the Super Bowl that year. But the same thing, I go back to the same statement we made a little earlier versus the Titans. Certain teams have your number in certain matchups. We can run the ball on the Colts all day, especially to try to keep Peyton off the field. Didn't always win them, but we beat the Colts, fairly. We split a lot with them. We weren't nowhere near the better team, but we were that one team that can upset them because we knew that we can effectively run the ball versus them. And that's a game for the record books, especially in the Jaguar record books and the Colts record books, as well as the NFL. Just an amazing day. Big memory, huge memory.
Did you guys know? I mean, because you ran pretty well in the first game. I think you guys ran for 191 yards in the game you lost up at Indy. How confident were you guys when that game started that what you want to do, you were going to be able to do whatever you wanted?
Always very confident, extremely confident. Even the week leading up to it, we always knew the Colts were the team to beat. The Colts, the Pats. But in our division, it was the Colts. And if we were going to do anything, it would start with beating them and letting the teams around the NFL know that we're not a bad team. We're going to we're going to come in there and we're going to fight you, for 60 minutes. So our confidence was always high versus the Colts. We knew we can run the ball well. We weren't as good in the passing game, but Dave was consistent. Dave could run the ball. He allowed, with his mobility and physical gifts, he made our running game better because he can make the backside defensive end have to stay at home because his bootleg threat, all that stuff, when you draw up the X's and O's. But Maurice, myself, Greg Jones, our running back coach, Coach Kennedy Pola, just an amazing person himself. We wanted to be the leaders of that offense. We knew it would start with us, and we took pride in it.
Was that, from just a competitive standpoint, the easiest game you played in your professional career? I mean, 375 yards on the ground. That's an ass whooping of historic proportion.
It is. It certainly is. I wouldn't. I've had some better days. I've had some games where that felt easier because I came out healthy. I tweaked my hammy that day. That game, I think I had 9 carries, a buck 30 something, as you mentioned. Uh, Still, I wish I should have had 200. Mojo should have probably had 200. We let the backups get in, and they got a piece of it too. Uh, but certainly a fun game. I don't know if I can call it the easiest, but a fun game, a memorable game. It reminds me too of a game earlier in my career against the Steelers when I set the Three Rivers Stadium record that will never be broken because the stadium no longer exists. Um, that's the that's the only game in my career, Trey, that I have a single regret for. Not even the fact that we didn't make the Super Bowl. I don't regret that because that wasn't on me. What I did have
Yeah.
control of was that game against the Steelers up in Three Rivers, maybe 2003, I think, or something like that. 2 or 3, yeah, something like that. No, it was 2000. I'm sorry, it's the year 2000.
Yeah.
In Three Rivers Stadium, I go for 234, and I missed, I don't know, 10 minutes or so in the fourth quarter because I was dehydrated. The few days leading up to it, myself, a few guys went down to Orlando to party. We had to be back Saturday morning before team meeting at 8 o'clock. I think we rolled back to Jacksonville in a limo. We pull up at the stadium around 7:30. We get out. Everybody's leaking whatever they were drinking. We were just, leaking fuming. We get in. We fly to Pittsburgh. Thank God it was a Sunday night game because the next day we were all hungover doing IVs. That didn't work. We get out there and start the game off. I'm cutting left and right, just chunks. 20, 10, 8, 7, 20, 30.
The bigger picture I'm getting up here is you ran for
I cramped
234
up.
yards hungover.
I cramped up.
Okay.
Yeah,
But you
hungover.
ran for
I cramped up.
234. You ran for 234 hungover.
Ask my teammates. It was crazy. I cramped up. I couldn't finish the game. And Walter Payton, like I said, he's my idol. He's the reason I
Yeah.
started loving the running back position, and I wanted to play running back. I wanted to break his single game record that day, but I cramped up and I couldn't finish the game. So that's my one big regret. Later on, Corey Dillon broke it, and then now
Right.
Adrian Peterson owns it. But yeah, that was my one opportunity that I kind of crapped on. But yeah, man,
Yeah, but you had a good time. You had a good time. So really,
I had a great
you
I had
ran
a
for
great
234.
time. I had an amazing
All
time.
right. All right. Why don't we take our final break? When we come back, I got some really interesting questions about the future for Fred Taylor. Stay with us. We're coming back on Half Forgotten History. Hey, if you're planning to place a bet this NFL Sunday, let's get you caught up with everything you need to know with Trey's Trends, presented by Caesar Sportsbook. Look, with all the additions and changes in the offseason, we thought that the AFC West was going to be this juggernaut of heavyweights punching it out. Turns out there's one heavyweight. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. They just finished dismantling a Tampa Bay Bucs team that through the first 3 games had given up a grand total of 27 points. The Chiefs hung 28 on them in the first half. Look, the Chiefs-Raiders rivalry is one of the best in football, but it's been decidedly one-sided since Andy Reid showed up. In his career as a Kansas City Chiefs head coach, Andy Reid is 15-3 straight up and 12-6 against the spread when playing the Raiders. Making matters worse, the Chiefs still employ Patrick Mahomes as quarterback. In AFC West games, he's 22-3 straight up and 14-10-1 against the spread. Perspective now, that 22-3 straight up record is the best record for any quarterback in his first 25 divisional games since the AFL-NFL merger of 1970. Download the Caesar Sportsbook app today to make your bets, and to find more of Trey's Trends, it's real simple. Follow at Caesar Sports on social. All right, time for the answer to our Mercedes-Benz trivia question. There are 8 teams whose leading rusher has a higher total overall than Jacksonville Jaguars leading rusher Fred Taylor's 11,695. Here are the 8. Obviously, the Cowboys with Evan Smith, the all-time leading rusher in NFL history. The Bears with Walter Payton. The Lions with Barry Sanders. The Chargers with LaDainian Tomlinson. The Cleveland Browns with Jim Brown. The Steelers with Franco Harris. The Bills with the Thermalator, Thurman Thomas. And the Vikings with all day Adrian Peterson. There you have it. And now back to more of this Half-Forgotten History episode with the Jags leading rusher, Fred Taylor. Back with Fred Taylor here now on Half-Forgotten History. So when you stepped away, you had 42 Jacksonville franchise records. As you said, you ran for 11,000 yards, almost 5 yards shy of 11,700, 11,695. Why isn't Fred Taylor getting more consideration for the Hall of Fame?
Somehow I knew that conversation would come up. I can fault a lot of things, man. But I think one, I don't have a vote, so I guess let's
Yeah,
start there. But I played in a market where, you know, it wasn't a great media market in Jacksonville unless you were winning. Um, Timing. I always go back to timing. There were times when um, I had great seasons. Some guys had better seasons. So that didn't allow for me to make it to certain Pro Bowls. I think one, the Pro Bowl is a joke. Um, because as a rookie, let's start with my rookie year, Trey. Look at
yep,
Randy Moss, who was in '98, and Peyton Manning, who was also in the class of '98. And you look at the guys that were the rookie of the year candidates. I still like to believe I had a better rookie campaign than Moss. I had more touchdowns, more yards, what have you. Moss had two great games. The Green Bay game, he went
one against
crazy,
the Cow, and
and
the
the
game against the
Cowboys
Cowboys on
game.
Thanksgiving.
Those
Yeah,
two games against those great franchises solidify his spot as rookie of the year. That's my opinion. So start there, and then I had a better, I had better numbers than Eddie George, who I believe was the last guy that was a shoe in for the Pro Bowl that year. So they tend to the way the league worked then was they tend to continue to take the veteran guys that had already been to Hawaii for the Pro Bowl. Unless you
right.
were a rookie that came in and just went lights out and completely just killed it versus those guys, you weren't a guy that they were going to take. The fan votes, et cetera, et cetera. But and that's part of it. I think it starts there. Um, I think the Pro Bowl, I mean, not, excuse me, I think the Hall of Fame conversation had increased over the last couple of years. And I think that in due time, that someday I will be in Canton. I like to always say delayed, not denied, but that day will come, it'll find itself. But to still be in the conversation is good. Um, I like to make an argument that when I retired, my numbers were better than 16 of the guys that were currently in the Hall of Fame as running backs.
Yep,
So I think
yep.
that's a valid argument in itself. Um, the comparison with Barry, guys with a minimum of 2,500 carries with an average of 4.6 per carry, I think that has some weight in it. If you look at now, considering Tony's a Hall of Famer, my career was better statistically after Baselli left Jacksonville. Um, when you really weigh things out, in about the same amount of games, I'm talking about per average carry, per yards per game, and I had to carry a larger percentage of the offense once Bo left, and once we had those losing seasons, it was me that they looked to uh, to run the team through and the offense through. So I had a lot more, responsibilities and weight, but I still put up numbers. So
Yeah.
if Canton happens, while I'm alive, that's going to be amazing. Um, if it doesn't happen while I'm alive, I pray and hope that my children and my family are able to, enjoy the induction. But I still believe that someday it will happen. That thing will take its own course.
Yeah, well, the numbers are there. By the way, you guys had in '98. You had the same number of touchdowns as Moss. He had 17. You had 14 rushing, 3 receiving, but you did have more yards. You absolutely had
Right,
more total yards than
right.
Randy Moss that year. So, where do you want this pivot thing to go? Right? What's your plan, or do you have a plan for how this thing is going to shape out? Because it's kind of becoming a thing.
You know what I said to a few days ago with Ryan and Chan is one, I just want us to be as consistent and as authentic as we were when we started it. I want us to be
Yeah.
that way when we're, 2 or 3, 5 years down the road. I want it to be the exact same. I want it to be a safe place and a trustworthy place for any guest that we have. That's players, celebrities, actors, actresses, whomever, politicians, however it continues to grow. I want everybody to understand that at some point in life, you're going to have to be faced with decisions that's going to force you to pivot. And really, that's the basis of it. These life-changing stories that we're able to tell and allow for greater insight and for the viewer to feel like they're in there with us. So from a format standpoint, I just wanted to just be just open, short content dialogue where we just have an amazing conversation. For the long run, consistency,
Well,
authenticity, all that great stuff, and I think we're good on it because I have two real co-hosts with me. Ryan is great, Shannon is great, and we have a great team around us, and we just have fun with it. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Well, that's the easy part. You can tell that you guys have a great chemistry together, and it really works, and that's what makes it fun. So, listen, I appreciate the time. I know you're running around doing a bunch of stuff, and if not in the Hall of Fame right now, you're definitely in the hungover Hall of Fame for the 200-yard game against the Steelers, and that counts. That counts, okay? Don't think it doesn't.
I keep a red cup somewhere close by, too, every now and then.
Hey, what do you know? There you go. Cheers, my friend.
I appreciate you, Trey. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, brother. So once again, thanks to Fred for joining us. And again, kids, don't ever think you can't do something when you're hungover. Fred Taylor is the gift we needed. He walked so we could fly. Speaking of flying, next week's guest made a living out of doing that in the NFL. He was a big play every time he touched the football, and also had some really interesting things happen after he touched the football. Longtime NFL wide receiver Deshaun Jackson joins us next week on Half Forgotten History. We'll see you then.